How important is Tristen Keys to the Ole Miss recruiting class?
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into the portal. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime college football recruiting analyst and writer. Thank you for making the portal your first listen each and every day. Truly appreciate you stopping in to talk some recruiting and transfer portal with me. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Today, it's all things Ole Miss, and that means Steven Willis. Look, man, you're about as dialed into Ole Miss as anybody know. You work there, you cover it. You cover it 7 days a week. Thank you very much, Mr. Steven Willis, for showing up. What's going on, brother? How's everything going in your world?
Man, I'm just getting ready for a pretty wild spring on the Locked On Ole Miss thing. Anybody that has been watching the site knows that I have a surgery coming up this spring, and Brian's going to fill in for me while I am out and recovering. So I'm kind of doing the preparations for that. And so I'm trying to cover Ole Miss as best I can, but I'm also trying, like, I've got like 70 days until I go under the knife. So I've got to get all that ready to go. And so that's kind of what's going on right now.
Well, there you go. That sounds like a lot of busy time with details, paperwork, and all that kind of stuff.
Oh,
that's fine.
Definitely.
That's fine. Today, there's two primary topics. I want to discuss Tristen Keys, maybe the best receiver in the country. He's certainly among them. Hattiesburg kid. And then after we talk about the whole receiver situation with Ole Miss, try to fend off Tennessee and LSU and Alabama and everybody else, I want to talk about the transfer portal because Kiffin he's really unique with how he does it, in my opinion. And I want to get Steven's thoughts. Obviously, again, you've worked at Ole Miss, you've covered it, you're a fan, you grew up in Mississippi. I want to go over those. So first off, let's give the backdrop to Tristen Keys. I've met him, been around him, great kid. He's from Hattiesburg. This is how cool he is, Steven, how much he loves football. That Polynesian Bowl, he flew out there to go play in it. And he plays with the 7-on team that was at Battle Miami. That tournament was actually in Broward County, but just north of Miami. Well, it was on the same time. After he got done with the Polynesian Bowl, Coastline Stars, it's a Mississippi-based 7-on program team. He flew overnight 13 hours to get to South Florida for 1 day to play 7-on-7. That is a guy that likes football. That is a very good player. 6'3", 180 pounds, something like that, 190 pounds. Tremendous kid, great ball skills, really long, has the ability to make guys look pretty bad, honestly, for as long as he is. He's not as physically developed as some other guys like Jeremiah Smith weight-wise, but at a year or so from now, he's going to be 200-plus pounds. What do you think, Steven, is the pitch here for Ole Miss? I mean, he's a Hattiesburg kid. They recruit that high school, Hattiesburg High, every year. Everybody does. What's the pitch? How important is Tristen Keys to the Rebels?
I think Tristen Keys is really important for Ole Miss. When you look at the pitch that they're going to give him, the fact that a wide receiver that is dominant, the history with a Lane Kiffin offense, it's a guy that can get you to the next level, can get you all the things that you want just by going and playing football for your home state. Like you said, it's a Hattiesburg, Mississippi kid. Now, granted, Ole Miss is a northern Mississippi area, which means Alabama and LSU are probably closer than Ole Miss to this prospect. But Ole Miss is going to let him know, it's like, hey, wide receivers in our system, we have a history of turning them out and putting them in the league. And just go watch the Super Bowl, and you can see A.J. Brown and exactly the history that Ole Miss has with the wide receiver unit. Now, one thing that's interesting to me, and I talked to you a lot last year over the recruitment of Caleb Cunningham. And this recruitment to me is going down exactly the same road as Caleb Cunningham. All of the recruiting insiders are thinking all the money schools, the Alabamas, the LSU, the Texas A&Ms, and nobody really wants to talk about Ole Miss. Well, I talked to this kid at Under Armour. I talked to him about Ole Miss. He was very much interested in Ole Miss being the home state school, which means that Ole Miss is going to have a shot to get him, which means just like the Caleb Cunningham situation, he might commit to an Alabama. But at the end, I think Lane Kiffin might really win.
Well, it's really interesting because Tristan's such an easygoing kid. He doesn't like to disappoint anybody.
Mm.
But as you know, Stephen, you can only select one institution at the end of the day. You got to say no a bunch. That's hard.
Unless I think he's DJ Law, the defensive back that signed with Texas A&M, Ole Miss, and Utah on signing day.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes there's a little bit of shenanigans with recruiting, but that's another story. Ole Miss, like last year, Trey Harris, some of the different guys that they've had. Do you think that LSU's not going to have a hard time selling receivers? Tennessee's offense is pretty easy to sell. Bama, obviously, that offense, they just got the coordinator that was with that staff at Washington. He's coming down. How do you differentiate yourself if you're Ole Miss to get a kid like this, who I think you could make a strong argument that he's not only the number one player in Mississippi, but the number one receiver in the country? What's the differentiating factor for you if you were Lane Kiffin?
Lane Kiffin and the way he calls offense is going to be the differentiating factor. It goes back to when he had Amari Cooper at Alabama, and Amari Cooper had 130 catches. Whenever he has a star, he overly used him. If Trey Harris would not have gotten hurt this year, he would have probably had 120 catches and been the Biletnikoff winner, because that's what he was on pace. He almost led the SEC in receiving and missed like 4 or 5 games this year. That's how much Lane Kiffin used him. I think that is going to be a major selling point for Tristen Keys because of basically the track record over the last 10 or 15 years in a Lane Kiffin system, going back even Elijah Moore, Jonathan Mingo. There's just a history of putting them in the league and actually using the stars.
Well, there's no argument with the success that he's had at the wide receiver position. Bigger receivers to that end. Nothing wrong with that. And again, for those that don't know, Tristan's about 6'3", so he fits that profile to a T. Give people an overview. Let's say there's a prospect that's similar. You can pick whatever position you want, Stephen, that's in Jackson, Mississippi. That's central. But there's another kid that's exactly the same somewhere along the Delta, along the coast. How much more difficult is it for them to get a Southern Mississippi kid typically as opposed to Central or especially Northern?
Well, generally, whenever there's a big-time player in extreme South Mississippi, the leader is going to be LSU regardless. It's almost like LSU is the in-state school. It was a situation, I think it was like 15 or 20 years ago. There's a prospect named DeAndre Brown. He was out of Ocean Springs.
Yeah, that's
and
10 minutes from the ocean.
Yeah. And you're sitting there going, it's like, okay, LSU, he's going to end up at LSU. Everybody, just a foregone conclusion he was going to go to LSU. He ended up deciding to go to Southern Miss for other reasons, but it's a situation to where LSU is kind of the de facto in-state school because you're 50, 60, 70 miles away from Baton Rouge, depending on what part of the state. It's like Picayune is another place that is on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. Not a player from Picayune has gone to either Mississippi State or Ole Miss. They have all gone out of state for whatever reason. And I think that's because that the extreme coastal areas, they view Mississippi and Ole Miss and Mississippi State as a little bit different because it's so far away. From the Mississippi Gulf Coast, Ole Miss is 6-7 hours away. I mean, it's a haul. It's like going from Knoxville to Memphis, honestly. And everybody knows how much trouble Tennessee has recruiting Memphis.
There you go. Yeah, they've never had a ton of success there, to be honest with you. That's a good comparison. As for Ole Miss moving forward, quarterback play, they've got a lot of guys. What is it that you're hearing about the future at the position that would help them recruit Tristen Keys?
Well, Tristen Keys is likely going to get 1 year of Austin Simmons, who is the most hyped quarterback Ole Miss has had probably since Eli Manning, honestly, as far as just a drop back passer that can do a lot of stuff. He's going to get a year of that. And with the track record that Lane Kiffin has at quarterback, this 2025, 2026 quarterback that he's recruiting, whoever he gets to come in, we've heard stories of Reese Wise from Austin Westlake, Landon Duckworth. Ole Miss rose up the list there. These are players that Tristen Keys are going to be very familiar with, so we'll see exactly how it goes.
Well, I know that quarterback is important for any guy that want to go into a class that, the signal caller is good, but there's no two positions in football or probably sport that are more connected than wide receiver and quarterback. So that's an important thing. But they've got other guys on the roster that are good too, and I'm not surprised that they've got options on the roster, nor am I surprised that they're probably going to add another good one.
I really like AJ Maddox too. I forgot to mention him earlier, but he's a freshman, not going to play very much. But I think with Pierce Clarkson coming in as a transfer and AJ Maddox competing for the backup behind Austin Simmons, I think there's a good chance that AJ Maddox ends up the backup quarterback in 2025.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, that's another talented player that I'm sure that Tristen is familiar with, obviously.
Yes, right down the road.
Yeah, the same area. So, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised at all. When we come back, I want to talk about Ole Miss's ability to find the nuggets in the transfer portal, because honestly, there aren't many schools that do it better than what Lane Kiffin does it with the Rebs. Looking for tickets to your next big event, whether it's a concert, comedy show, or sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. Game Time Picks, that app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. Game Time Picks is something that I've been able to use, and this is why you will love it just as much as me. Curated deals that make it simple for you to find tickets at a great price. No more sifting through a whole bunch of options. That's easy with Game Time Picks. Also, if you're looking for a quick app in general to use, and I'm not the most patient guy, Game Time is the one for you, because once you click on it and you're not sure if you want that seat, you click on that seat and you get the view of the venue, whether it's a movie theater, whether it's a concert hall, football stadium, baseball. You want to see how far you are to the pitcher's mound. Game Time allows you to do that right from your phone. Ready to take the next event and make it even better? Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Lane Kiffin had an extraordinary 2024 portal haul. Now they're doing well again. I'm not sure that it's going to be quite as good, because a certain D tackle that they got out of A&M last year kind of changed things, and he had Mississippi ties. That was homegrown kind of deal. But just give your overview first off, Steven. What did the Rebs add? And is there anybody under the radar for them that might surprise some people that follow the Rebels?
I think they added the change of an offense potentially. And whenever you look at it, they added 3 tight ends in this transfer portal cycle.
Wow. I did not know that.
Which tells me, just personally, that I think 12 personnel might be a real issue, a real thing that they're going after. But they added Caleb Odom, who is a jumbo wide receiver / flex tight end. Luke Haas, tight end from Arkansas, who was one of their better players a year ago, and Trace Bruckler, an unknown relatively tight end out of New Mexico. Those guys got brought in with the people they already had on campus, Daquan Wright. Now you have a tight end room that's 6 or 7 players deep. And this is what I think is going to happen. This is what I think Lane Kiffin and his offense, and where the mad scientist Lane Kiffin is working. With the helmet communication that has gone on right now, that's kind of blunted the tempo offenses. Tennessee struggled. Ole Miss struggled. None of the offenses were as effective as they have been. Somebody like Caleb Odom and the number of tight ends, you're going to have a situation that Ole Miss can kind of stay on the field to where you can't substitute, wait until that magic 15-second mark hits, quickly shift over to another position because you have a lot of tight ends on the field that can do a lot of different things. And all of a sudden you might be in a 10 personnel passing formation, and after the 15-second mark, you have the personnel to go in and have a true 12 or 13 personnel look with a true 11, 12 personnel formation to run the football. I think that might be the future of offensive football, the way that tempo was.
Well, if you've got a tight end that can block inside, or you can go outside and be a threat, the defense is screwed. There's no way around it. And that's the big, it's ironic, like Brown and some of the other guys they've had at Ole Miss, they could be great blockers. They'd use them on wham blocks. They'd use them on screens to help a running back break loose. They've done a lot of things. Having a bigger guy outside, and he's also a quote-unquote tight end, if you move him inside the H-back or just motion him across the formation, they can do things the 180-pound guy can't. That's a really big advantage. So I agree with you. Seeing those formations change, even though your personnel stays the same, defense, they're guessing. And especially like Lane is tremendous at teaching the hurry up. That's a really big pain to try to defend. It's smart. And especially goal line. They struggled some in short yardage this past year. Running back was a kind of a goofy situation, some injuries, departures, etc. But I'm curious to see what they do. As far as players that were the headliners, who were the best players just out front? If you didn't know anything about Ole Miss, who were the top guys out of the portal for the Rebs this year?
Obviously Caleb Odom, because we all know he was a 5-star, basically going into his freshman year at Alabama. He's going to be a headliner. Kewan Lacey, Ole Miss signed him as well, running back out of Lawrence, Texas. And defensively, Prince Will Amon Mielen, the brother of Princely Amon Mielen, came in as well. And on the back end of the defense, they played a little bit of Moneyball. And I think this is interesting. And you talked about Lane's success in the portal.
Sure.
Ole Miss has a cap manager on their staff. Literally, his job is to do the salary cap. He went to position groups and said, hey, you have this amount of money. You can sign 1 player. You can sign 4 players. It doesn't matter. This is the amount of money that you have. And Ole Miss went out there and attacked that with some people that have a lot of the tools and the potential to really break out. Look at Deuce Alexander, the wide receiver out of Georgia. He's a great route runner and all of this, but he didn't play too much at Wake Forest last year, but you can see where maybe you see a little similarities to an Elijah Moore, somebody on the inside that can be a little bit of a burner. He's a good route runner. If you can unlock that, all of a sudden you got a bargain at getting him as well. So I think Ole Miss played a little bit of Moneyball this year. They ended up with the 2nd-ranked transfer portal class, according to 247, as it is. But this isn't the Walter Nolan, Princely Amon Mielen, and Trey Amos class because, to be honest, those guys weren't in the portal this year.
That's right.
But Ole Miss was able to say, hey, this is what we need. These are the attributes that we are looking for. And if we can hit, if our evaluations are correct, we can continue to move forward at the same level.
Well, I know that they find a way to get it done because they escalated their program in a lot of different ways this past season. Where did Ole Miss use the portal the most to improve the roster? Because, I mean, they lost some NFL talent up front. D-line, that's obvious. Where else besides D-line do you think they helped themselves overall the most via the transfer portal?
The pass catchers. I think Ole Miss brought in 7 pass catchers between tight ends and wide receivers. Like Deuce Alex. Yeah, it's a good – they're going to be a very pass-happy team, I do believe, this year. And they brought in a lot of options to help. And then whenever you look at the fact they brought in a high school haul with Caleb Cunningham, Winston Watkins, Samari Reed, and Dylan Alford, there's a lot of pass catchers in that room. This, I was telling people, was like, hey, this Ole Miss roster was not last year. It's not last year. Last year was the best roster they've ever had at the University of Mississippi. But this probably roster right now is probably sitting 3rd on the list. It's not like they took as far of a step back as people think. But whenever you see a Walter Nolan head out, a Jackson Dart head out, it's that's automatically, that's obviously where your mind goes. But if Austin Simmons does what everybody thinks Austin Simmons is going to do, that's not to undersell what Jackson did, but it's not going to hurt as much as you think. The running game's going to be a little bit better. The way they've recruited systematically means that they're going to help the running game a little bit. And if that can happen, this could be a similar situation to what Tennessee had going into last season, to where you're not really expected. You're kind of on the outside in the fringe. You get a couple of good wins, get a little momentum, and all of a sudden you look up, you're in the 12.
When we come back, we're going to talk with Steven about what's next for them. And he just talked a little bit about it. Austin Simmons and everything. Where is the Ole Miss program overall? That's next on the portal. Austin Simmons is a kid that I knew, and for those that are unaware, he is so intelligent. He graduated high school not a year early, but 2. Like, he's a mega brain. Goes to Ole Miss. I thought, and many others did too, his dad and many others, that he should have just stuck with baseball. He's throwing 90-plus mile an hour as a sophomore in high school. He has a cannon, and he's left-handed. But he is going to, at least we think, be Ole Miss's quarterback this year, barring something unforeseen. What have you heard behind the scenes about him, and what do you think Ole Miss fans are going to see this year and possibly the year after if he sticks around?
The first thing that everybody needs to know about this kid, Austin Simmons would have graduated from Ole Miss already if it wasn't for the fact that they didn't offer a class in the fall. He needs like one class to graduate. So he's like
not a normal kid at all.
Yeah, and his processing ability, you can just see whenever he plays. Go back and watch the Ole Miss Georgia game when he was forced into that one series, and you can see the processing that he has. It's so quick. He came in a very high stress, high leverage situation and just kind of calmly processed and did the things that he needed to do. Because of that, Ole Miss fans noticed that. The last time we saw something like that was Eli Manning, somebody that could process information that quickly. And because of that, the hype is absolutely through the roof, because anytime you're attached to a person that you're in the building studying film named after, Eli Manning, Archie Manning, the Manning Center, that is the football building at Ole Miss. Whenever that is heady water. And Austin Simmons, I mean, I think he's the most hype quarterback that Ole Miss has had since him. And if he does just what's expected, not even above and beyond, just what's expected, you're looking at 9-10 wins next season, honestly.
Well, I have a lot of high expectations for him. So do you think, last question, I'll get you out of here on this, Steven. Do you think Ole Miss has gotten to a plateau now where, barring, like if you lose your starting quarterback in week 2 of a season, things can always go sideways, even with their depth chart. Like, outside of catastrophic injuries, what do you think the bottom end is for Ole Miss moving forward with Lane because of what he's gotten done with the roster? Is it 7 wins, 8 wins? Like, if things just, everything bad luck goes against them, where are they?
I think the floor is at 8 wins at Ole Miss. I think he's gotten to that point. And he's done that one time in the last 4 years, hit 8 wins. That was in 2022. And that was Jackson Dart's first season as a starter, for instance. So it's a point. I talked about it on my show earlier in the week. Like Reese Wise, the quarterback from Austin Westlake, he came to junior day, visited, said this was my dream offer, and started mentioning a whole bunch of stuff. And this is a kid from, like I said, Austin Westlake High School in Texas. And it's to the point where as soon as the offer becomes committable, he's probably going to commit. Well, he's at the point, when you think about it, he was probably in 7th grade the last time that Ole Miss had a season that was less than relevant. Ole Miss has been on the national scene throughout his whole junior high and high school career. And this is who Ole Miss is recruiting right now. Whenever you point, it's like, hey, yeah, look at the history. In their mind, they all watch football. They know what's going on. Ole Miss is a 10-win program. They've won 10 games 3 out of the last 4 years. So I think that Ole Miss as a program status last year took a step up, even though they didn't make the playoff. All that is left for Lane Kiffin to do is to kick the door down and get into the tournament.
Well, there you go. Lane Kiffin is kind of on that. I wouldn't be shocked because, and I pull for Austin. He's a good dude. If they made it this year, the SEC is a gauntlet. I truly understand that. But if you've got a quarterback and a good play caller, obviously Kiffin is, whether you like the guy or not, don't discourage yourself from admitting that as fact. So I'm curious to see what Ole Miss does this year. Steven, thank you very much. Tell everybody where they can find your work online and everywhere else.
Hey, you can check me out at Locked On Ole Miss on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. You can give me a follow on Twitter at the Steven Willis. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're basically all over. We try to be a little bit everywhere. Brian's good people. Always, man. It's awesome coming on here, man.
I appreciate it. You can get this everywhere too. Apple, Spotify, YouTube. The portal is here to stay, talking recruiting, talking transfer portal, and basically roster management each and every day. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. We will see you again soon.